Flex your business with an American Express Business Gold Card. You'll earn 4 times membership rewards points on your top 2 eligible spending categories, like transit and electronics, each month, on up to $150K in combined purchases per year. Plus, you can now earn 3 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Terms and points cap apply. Learn more at AmericanExpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold, built for business by American Express.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
There's clearly a part of him that isn't there, you know, like a conscience or something.
He's a psychopath.
Yeah, because he just has no sort of concept of what's acceptable. You know, at the beginning when he is talking to the construction site manager, and he's like, I'll do an internship. And it's like, you've just stolen from this guy. He knows you've stolen from him.
99, one way from 100. Welcome, everyone, to Flixwatcher podcast.
Hello, film fans. Joining us in the Flixwatcher studio today, we have Hannah.
Hi.
Ella.
Hello.
And as always, Kobe.
Hello.
And we are reviewing Nightcrawler.
As always, guys, we have all the show notes online at flixwatcher.tv for all the episodes, so please come and visit us there. Of course, join us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod, and please come to iTunes, rate us, and subscribe.
There will be spoilers and bad language. You have been warned. Hello and welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher Pod. Today we have Hannah and Ella in the studio. If you would like to say hello to our listeners and tell them about the podcasts that you do.
Hello, my name is Hannah Woodhead. I am the associate editor at Little White Lies magazine. We have a podcast called Truth in Movies, where we talk about movies and the truth. And you can find me there usually once every 3 weeks or so in the guest seat. And you can find me on Little White Lies reviewing movies pretty regularly.
One thing I love about Little White Lies is the cover.
Oh, yes.
How does that get decided?
You know, people ask that all the time,
well,
and I don't want to ruin the magic. But no, I mean, our whole thing has been we are independent. We're completely independent. We don't, studios don't pay us to put films on the cover, contrary to what some people think. But no, we just kind of pick the film that we love and we want to talk about the most. So the last issue we did was If Beale Street Could Talk, because we love Barry Jenkins. We have a really sort of long relationship with Barry, and he's a big fan of the magazine. He's been reading it for years. He loved the Master issue that we did, like way back when. So it's really nice to kind of champion these films that maybe won't get as much awards love as other films, but that we think are worth talking about.
Do you feel, you've talked about awards love, and as we're recording, it's just gone past the Oscars. Beale Street didn't win anything, did it? No, Reggie King. Reggie King won.
Yeah, very well deserved. You know, if it had been up to me, Barry would have been up for all the awards. He got a lot of Independent Spirit Awards, which was very, very well deserved.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's one of those films that will kind of go down in history, and people will say we should have done more. But
People talk about that, but at the same time, I'm not too disappointed for him because Moonlight was
this is the thing.
Do you know what I mean?
3 years ago, he was on top of the world.
First feature film, it's got Moonlight, and it's one of the best films. I don't think he's too.
I don't think Barry's that worried about it. I don't think he's sitting at home going, "Oh, I need another Oscar."
Well, and also in his speech when he won Best Director for the Indie Spirit Awards, he started his speech with saying, basically, I didn't want to win this. I don't want to be up here.
Shouting at Lynn Ramsey.
Yeah, and his whole speech was speaking to the people in the room and everywhere, not in the room, who was listening, saying, hire women to do more things and champion these people. So
we are going off on a tangent here, but it wasn't in this year. It wasn't a case of hire more women. It was just choose more women.
Yeah, the awards season definitely.
There was a plethora of female-driven films which could have easily replaced a lot of the detritus that ended up in the best film category.
You said it first,
Who are you?
Hi there. I am Ella Kemp. I work as the cinema editor at Culture Whisper, and I freelance for other publications, reviewing films, sometimes at Little White Lies, sometimes at Sight and Sound, and various other places. And you can find me on the Cuzon film podcast, and once in a blue moon on the Little White Lies podcast.
For people who don't know, explain what Culture Whisper is.
So have you heard of Time Out? So Culture Whisper is a Time Out-esque publication giving busy Londoners a guide of what they should see, do, eat, watch, like at any given moment in time. We write
What about
guides. Right now?
You should be listening to this.
Oh my
this
God.
podcast.
Okay,
This
when this
is
podcast
what
finishes,
to
so like 40 minutes time.
Oh my God. Oh,
I was going to say, interestingly enough, in my team meeting at work, whoever leads the meeting has to bring in something from the kind of outside, and the person who led it this week was like, "I'd like to introduce you all to the Culture Whisperer." He was like, "I've just discovered this site, and it's really great, and I really like this, and I really like that." So he brought it to the table for our team.
Terrific. Well, that is great to hear. Thank you very much,
So the team at
everybody.
Nesta now know about Culture Whisper.
They do. Yeah.
But we are an exclusively online magazine, so you can read us on the website, and of course we're on Twitter, Instagram, all of that. And if there's anything worth doing in London to do with films, let me know. You can find me on Twitter.
So Hannah, you chose Nightcrawler for us.
I sure did.
So can you tell us why you chose it, and then give us, a 2-minute synopsis?
Yeah, I'll start with why I chose it, I guess. So I first saw this film when was it released? 2014. So I would
Was it that long ago?
Yeah.
Shit.
This was 5 years
I
ago.
hate how films age your kind of like perception of perception of time.
It doesn't feel like that long to me, but it is. And I was in university. I was in my final year. Or maybe my second year, I don't know. I took a friend of mine to watch it, and he's not a film person, so he was just kind of like, "Hannah, what the hell?" And I was there like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize how weird it was going to be. I thought it was just going to be a good old Jake Gyllenhaal movie," because I have always been a big Jake Gyllenhaal fan right since my teens, and now it feels weird that I've basically been in love with him since I was like 15.
Really casual.
So, super cash. Anyway, I chose it because I thought it would be a good time to revisit it, because Dan Gilroy has just made a film called Velvet Buzzsaw,
which is a Netflix
exclusive.
Yep.
So I was like, yeah, let's go back and see how well Nightcrawler's aged. I remembered really liking it at the time and really been like, oh wow, this Dan Gilroy guy seems really cool, seems to be a really good director, and it was kind of nice to see Jake Gyllenhaal doing something a bit weird. He's since gone on to make many weird films, but this kind of felt to me like a bit of a turning point for him, where he was doing more character acting rather than just being the hot guy who cries sometimes. So brief synopsis, Jake Gyllenhaal plays a sort of very odd man called Lewis Bloom, whose name frequently gets abbreviated to Lou Bloom.
I didn't know it was Lewis.
No, he says it. So this was something I discovered rewatching it. When Riz Ahmed's character meets him for the first time, he says, "Oh, hey, Lou," and he goes, "Lewis," and corrects him. But then everyone just keeps calling him Lou. Anyway, I think that's really interesting. But yeah, so he plays this character called Lewis Bloom, who is... at the beginning when we meet him, he doesn't have a job. He's looking for a job. He's looking not just for a job, he's looking for a career. He's looking for something he can kind of like fixate on, and something that he can tie to his whole being, something he can become. So he kind of by accident falls into the very strange game of recording crimes, which is something that I think a lot of people might not really be aware of. It's something that I don't think we do as much over here. In America, there is a whole industry built on very graphic footage of crimes as they're taking place, accidents and crimes.
And also to have the ambulance chaser kind of lawyer things as well there.
Exactly. So he starts recording crimes and selling the footage to a news network who are kind of trying to peddle this narrative of urban crime coming into the suburbs. And in order to get this footage, he becomes more sort of ruthless and more creative about how he is able to get the footage before anyone else. And Rene Russo plays this sort of like firebrand blonde bombshell news producer who he sells his footage to, and Riz Ahmed stars as poor little Richard, who is his assistant.
Well, we are allowed to spoil, so we'll get to what happens to Richard later on in the chat. Ella, what were your thoughts on Nightcrawler?
So I also first saw this film at university. I was in my first year and went with a friend of mine who was also studying film. And yeah, we were both floored at the time. We really loved it.
So your friend was better than Hannah's at
well,
this film.
I wasn't going to say anything, but so no, we both really loved it. And I don't actually remember in that moment in time how much I had seen of Jake Gyllenhaal. I know that I knew of him, but yeah, this was unlike anything else. And I thought it was really terrific. And but I hadn't rewatched it since, and so I was very much looking forward to rewatching. And we'll come to this later, but on a smaller screen as well, because I think it's a film where you really appreciate the biggest screen visuals and sound as possible.
Well, for Nightcrawler?
Yes.
Well, I thought, on this rewatch, because I saw it in the cinema, and because it is also dark, that having it on a bigger screen, I thought would be the way you have to watch it, because it's difficult to get those colours and contrast in. I think it did work quite well. I should get to that in the score later on. But I want to go into Helen, who's a big fan of Jake Gyllenhaal.
I am. I mean, I also saw this at the cinema, but as a fairly old adult, because I'm a bit older than you. And enjoyed it. And
you saw us some film-loving friends anyway, so...
We did. Were you there as well?
I wasn't there, no.
You weren't there, so this is how long we've been quizzing in that...
5 years.
Yeah, well, longer
than
that.
Holy shit.
We went as a little team outing to celebrate our...
victory, it must have been.
We must have been second or first place to got all those tickets. So that was a lovely evening for us all. We all enjoyed it very much. But so... Probably up until this point, I'd seen probably nearly all of Jake Gyllenhaal's films up until this point. So I didn't see The Prince of Persia, but I've been a big fan of his for a long time. And yeah, this is really sort of... he's always kind of made interesting films anyway. Obviously, Brokeback Mountain was before this, Donnie Darko. But this was his first film where, he played someone really interesting and goes to some really strange places. And I think sort of post this, he's just taken on really interesting films and just become someone who's even more interesting to watch and kind of see what he comes up with and who he works with his beautiful face.
Wow, I hadn't realised that he did Enemy before this. I thought Enemy was after. I really liked him in Enemy as well, which was a Denis Villeneuve film that he did. Denis? Look at me not knowing my French. Denis Villeneuve film. He did another one called Prisoners with him as well. And I remember seeing Enemy when I was on my year abroad. So I must have seen Nightcrawler when I came back. Anyway, enough about me. Enemy, I think Enemy is probably when I first was like, oh wow, Jake Gyllenhaal's getting like good roles again. And he played...
Are you saying like Prince of Persia is when he fell into a bit of a hole?
It was weird after he did Brokeback Mountain, he had those kind of... Actually, no, he did Zodiac. Zodiac's one of my favourite films.
Jarhead. So I watched Source Code after Nightcrawler actually, because I thought,
did you?
Oh yeah, I just kind of wanted a little bit more to top me
Gillen
up.
binge.
Yeah,
he's had quite a prolific career actually. I mean, I still do think of him as the kid from City Slickers. No,
really?
The kid. But I still think of him as Donnie Darko.
100%. I will always think of him as Donnie Darko.
And this Lou Bloom interpretation of Jake Gyllenhaal, it's probably not the right way to say that, but he's still Donnie Darko is a weird kid in that film.
I think you can definitely trace like the DNA of Lou Bloom back to his days like making Donnie Darko.
But it's if you'd just seen him in not Brokeback Mountain, like Day After Tomorrow or Prince of Persia, you wouldn't trail that back to Lou Bloom at all.
No.
So this performance in this film is great. And when you see just stills of him, if you had like a lineup of Jake Gyllenhaal stills, you'd know which one's Lou Bloom. Like his eyes are bugged out. He's got mania like all over his face.
It's like, apart from Prince of Persia, it's maybe the first time that he kind of totally transformed the way he looked for a film. You know, he looks really gaunt, and his hair is kind of like longer, and he ties it back in like a bun.
Yeah, he's got that weird little bun thing he puts up when he wants to be taken seriously.
Yeah, it's very
or
strange.
do like nasty stuff.
And he looks just haunted in general, and he has this really creepy smile. And Jake Gyllenhaal has a very like, he's very kind of all American looking, and then in this he's just like
he's
haunting.
a bit Patrick Bateman in this one.
Yeah. But like, if Patrick Bateman was a meth addict, you know, like he's kind of like, there's just something
less self-care.
If he didn't do the press-ups in the morning,
did a bit of meth.
Blue.
I have a question about the hair. So I just want to gauge what people think. So we've discussed the man bun. In the real world, when that, you know, whole thing happened, was... I'm trying to remember the time of it. Was it before or after Nightcrawler? I'm not saying that Jake Gyllenhaal and Dan Gilroy are trendsetters to that level, but are they?
Yeah, when was the man bun?
I think the man bun has been around longer than Nightcrawler.
But this was
certainly
like
in Shoreditch. Certainly in Shoreditch.
Okay.
And on some football pitches, some Premier League football.
There was a
point
point
in that.
There was a point in his career where he had the man bun and the beard going. It was a good look for him.
Was it?
I mean, he's not served a bad look ever, but you know, this was weird though, because I feel like the other films, I don't know what other films he was making around this time, but
around this time was Southpaw as well came out.
What the hell then? How did he go from Southpaw
That's
to
astonishing.
Although, to be honest, films can be obviously made years apart.
Yeah, but there's just, you know, sometimes like, so Velvet Buzzsaw is a good example of this. If you watch Velvet Buzzsaw, you're like, why is Jake Gyllenhaal so buff? And then you realise it's because he was filming Spider-Man at the same time.
Sure.
That's why he's so buff. And you're like, oh, of course, right, this fight makes way more sense now. Whereas there's nothing in his kind of filmography around that time that would indicate to me that he just kind of lost all his weight to do Nightcrawler, which makes it even more kind of interesting to me, because I'm like, it just comes out of nowhere. It doesn't really fit in the kind of other films that he was making around this time. I think even maybe up until Nocturnal Animals, you know, he was kind of just blah, 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 I'm Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah.
And
Well, Okja, he's got a crazy performance.
Yeah,
hasn't
that's
he?
the
that's
most
when he goes back in to crazy
performance.
Yeah.
That he's done.
Yeah.
Since.
But then he comes back out of it with Wildlife,
Yeah.
which is a film that I love so much. And it's such a... it's not even restrained, but just the whole tone of the film. It is back to the Jake Gyllenhaal that you would fall in love with, but then be really annoyed at yourself for falling in love with because he's a terrible person. But not because he looks terrifying or, you know, dangerous to the point that Lewis Bloom does.
I mean, we've talked mostly about Mr. G, the lovely Jake, but also, I mean, the film is great, and also, you know, you've got Rene Russo being great and Bill Paxton in one of his final.
So is Bill Paxton the other
TV
car chase that he sabotages? Yeah.
I mean, I think in terms of similar, I think maybe Taxi Driver was probably sort of a similar kind of film. I just think it's a really brilliantly creepy.
It's got some psycho about it as well. Yeah.
And it just really manages to articulate the obsession with kind of death and this real dark side that we have with consumption and mass media and
and fake news as well. This was kind of like before fake news was a thing. You know, he's talking about, there's a scene where Jake Gyllenhaal is like dragging a body across a crime scene to get a shot. And it's, you know, it's really, I remember watching this in the cinema and been like I couldn't look away, but I was very kind of disturbed by it. It's confronting you with a lot of very shocking ideas.
Because it's not overly violent in the way that it's not, I don't think it's an 18. It wasn't blood everywhere.
No, it's 15.
But the perception of what's actually going on is like, you're like, oh my fucking God, what the hell's he doing? And that's, I mean, at the start, we see him stealing stuff from, I don't know,
construction site.
And very quickly after that, he beats up the security guard, and that's our introduction to him.
There's clearly a part of him that isn't there. Yeah. You know, like a conscience
he's a psycho.
Or something.
He's psychopathic.
Yeah, because he just has no sort of concept of what's acceptable. You know, at the beginning when he is talking to the construction site manager, and he's like, I'll do an internship. And it's like, you've just stolen from this guy. He knows you've stolen from him. Like, he just has no kind of, and then of course there's all like a payoff, you know, at the end of the film. And you're like, oh wow, yeah, he's just completely morally bankrupt.
Well, let's talk about that payoff. Let's talk about I think we need to introduce Riz Ahmed's character.
Oh, my little boy Riz Ahmed. Yeah. This was one of his first big like Hollywood roles, I think. Maybe the first. Actually.
I love Riz. I think I love Riz Ahmed more than Jake Gyllenhaal.
Okay, controversial.
Generally, or in this film?
Generally, I think
Riz is incredible.
Riz is my boy. I'd love to like go on. Well, I think it's
go out on the town.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's one point he was just in everything at the same time. He's in Rogue One, OA, The Night Of, which I just kind of saw all at the same time.
2016 was a good year for him.
Not sure about Venom.
I mean, his masterstroke was, of course, his appearance in the video for Charlie XCX's Boys, but you know.
I actually read something on the way doing my homework about Nightcrawler and Riz Ahmed, that the influence that he had on the wider industry was actually quite astonishing. So I saw that following a speech that he gave at House of Commons in 2017, a group of friends launched something called the Riz test in 2018, and they were inspired. Well, they're inspired by the speech and modelled it off the Bechdel test, which is famously the test that some films do pass and some films don't pass, in which two women have a conversation about something other than a man. And so these friends started the Riz test, kind of looking at films that, you know, were or were not diverse. Yeah. And, you know, it clearly hasn't caught on that much. But I think it's really, really quite interesting that I wouldn't say that he's now got the same kind of fan base or is as well known as Jake Gyllenhaal or something like that. But, you know, to have that kind of impact and have a test named after you.
What is the parameters of the test? Can you remember?
So I think it was, so in his speech, I think he was saying, he was saying, you know, urging there to be more diversity in the film industry, to not be, you know, completely white casts. And he wanted, you know, more black people in film. He wanted better Muslim representation. And so I think the test was quite simple in the sense that, like, is white the only colour you can see? Does not pass.
Well, I think I'd add a few bits to that, because one thing I love about his character is that he's a character of South Asian origin, but that's not any
reference or anything.
Right.
Yeah, so it's just like he's a dude in the film, and he happens to be from potentially Pakistan. His parents protect, and that's it. It's not the part of the film. It's just he's a guy, and that's who he is.
Yeah.
And I think that for me is like, would be the Riz test, not just obviously if Beale Street Could Talk, Green Book. I mean, even Moonlight was like, these guys they're all African American or black, but that wasn't really a part of the film for me at all.
Right.
So I'd say that's
same with Nightcrawler for me. I just found it quite interesting that past the film, like the film's legacy and his legacy, and influence past that. I think it's brilliant.
I think it's cool. So tell us, Hannah, about what happens with Riz.
So poor Richard / Rick. To backtrack to what I was saying about Lewis Bloom, the scene where Lou is looking to hire someone for his camera crew, and he interviews Rick, who's this sort of very nervy, twitchy, you know, wide-eyed, adorable little thing who comes in and he's like, I worked in landscaping, but then I had allergies, so I decided that I couldn't do it anymore. And he's like homeless and he just really needs a job. And he says, hi. He comes in, he's like, hi, I'm Rick. Hi, what's your name? And he's like, oh, I'm Lewis. And he goes, hi, Lou. And he's like, Lewis. You know, that I think is just perfect. But anyway, so he gets this job working with Jake Gyllenhaal's character, and very quickly realizes that Lou Bloom is a psychopath, but kind of sticks with it because he needs the money, and he's promised, you know, a raise every so often. And in the end, Lou kind of just sets him up to get murdered, basically, all in the name of ratings. And he sees it as Rick dying for the cause, which is like, you know,
like, he really does die for the cause in the sense that it's not enough for Rick to die because of him. he has to then go and use footage. And he has to use Rick's life for the opportunities of his production company. He has to go and film Rick.
But he says to Rene Russo, he died doing what he loved. It's like,
no, he didn't.
He died doing what you love is what happened, you know.
And also, preceding that, which is something I think I missed out on, I kind of didn't fully appreciate the first time round, was it was just after he tried to negotiate a raise for himself.
Yeah.
So he negotiated a half decent raise, but then he realised that Lou Bloom was going to get like a fuck ton of money for doing the whatever bullshit they were up to that night. And he was like, hold on, I need more of this.
Yeah.
And that's what for me, if they hadn't had that second conversation, I think Rick might still be alive. But for Lou, that was just like, no, that's going to ruin my...
Because he says to him, doesn't he? He says, like, you tried to cheat me.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, and I wasn't having that, basically. They have this kind of horrible, like, it's like the Lion King. You know?
Is it?
You know the scene where Scar, like, pushes Mufasa off the... He's
Spoilers
like,
for anyone who's not seen The Lion King.
You know, though, he's like, it's like that kind of, like, you're going to die now. You know, that confrontation scene.
Kids, Scar doesn't say it like this. Kids should not be listening to this episode.
They might be.
But poor Riz Ahmed gets short shrift. But I'm happy to report that him and Jake do not seem to have ended on bad terms, as they have made another film together called The Sisters Brothers, in which they have lots of screen time together, and it's very cute and warm, and it's lovely. And also watching them be interviewed together about The Sisters Brothers. If you have like a spare 10 minutes, go on YouTube and like look up Jake Gyllenhaal and Riz Ahmed talking, because they are like the best bros, and it's very cute. It's very life affirming.
So what are your thoughts on Rene Russo and Bill Paxton?
I think they're great in it. I mean, she is brilliant as someone who clearly recognises that she could be out of a job any minute, because he is desperate to cling on. And there's the brilliant bit where I can't remember exactly what he says, but when he's asking about getting more money and referring to not in the bedroom like last night.
Yeah, so he kind of badgers her down with a whole like kind of stream of consciousness points, and then he said,
I want
finally,
you to respect me, or do these things at work, not just which is just, it's a bit of sick in your mouth.
She reminds me of Faye Dunaway's character from Network.
Yes. Yeah.
And also,
but with less power.
Yeah, way less power. Yeah. Rene Russo is married to Dan Gilroy as well.
Oh, okay.
And they have kind of like a creative partnership. She's in Velvet Buzzsaw as well. I think this role is way better for her in Nightcrawler. I think she's kind of got a lot more to do. And you can kind of see the character, like her becoming more greedy as her and Lou develop this like symbiotic relationship where she needs him for the ratings, but he needs her for the airtime, and it's, you know, they kind of feed off each other's like manic energy, whilst the other people at the station are like, what is wrong with you two? You're crazy.
Because that whole scene when the big kind of doing, well, what really triggers his getting loads more money is him coming into the home invasion.
Yes.
And
it's so creepy, that scene.
It's so creepy, him just going in there.
The crib. Oh.
You could tell he wanted the baby to be in there, didn't he?
Yeah.
Everybody's like, damn it. But then when they're reviewing the footage and the legal person comes in.
Oh. And
like the sanity
how much
check
of this
like,
can we show? And she
like,
goes, legally? And she goes, no, morally. Yes, of course, legally.
She needs it for it. Obviously, Lou's kind of unpicked her lifestyle, which is another. He's creepy on so many different layers.
That weird Mexican date they go on.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Their romantic relationship is so bizarre and awful, but I think it shows that it's really well written, because in most films nowadays, you know, you expect. Well, I tend to expect that any relationship between a man and a woman, when there's some kind of power conflict, at some point the question of romance is brought up, and then I think at that point sometimes the relationship and the credibility of the film for me disintegrates a little bit.
Right.
And I really appreciate that in this film it's played out in that awful date scene. Awful in the sense that it made me want to like rip my hair out, as opposed to it being awfully done. You know, that scene happens, but then their strange relationship still exists, and it goes up and it goes down, and the stakes are so high in so many different emotional and professional ways, and I think it's fascinating relationship.
I think it's interesting comparing this to the way romance works in Velvet Buzzsaw, where it's so much like kind of there's so much passion in all the relationships in that movie, whereas this is very like it's like a sexless marriage that just kind of like there's this awkward date and then they're kind of like still carrying on with each other, but it all feels like a business transaction.
She's almost like, fuck my life, but I need this.
Yeah.
And when he says, I know your contract's coming up to 2 years, it's the ratings wars coming to an end this month. So he's got a prime position. She doesn't want to have to go and find another job, which would be horrible and hellish. So he's a proper bellend. Should we go to the scores, guys?
Yeah. Let's have some scoring. So welcome to the spreadsheet of dreams. And the scores are all out of 5. You may have decimal places.
Yep.
If you wish. And we will start with you, Hannah, with the recommendability.
I think it's like a 4.5 for me. I would only really hesitate to recommend it if people don't kind of have strong constitutions. I wouldn't want to recommend it to people with a nervous disposition. I think it's quite creepy. It's quite tense. And it can be quite shocking, I think, to a lot of people. Even though we've said it's not that violent, but I think it gets in your head in a way that might make people uncomfortable.
So your friend that you went to see it with,
So are you still friends?
Yeah. What?
No.
Because you said
we're not still friends, but Nightcrawler didn't end that relationship.
You caveated that with someone who's not into films. Why do you feel that this should be more for the palette of someone who goes to films a lot?
That's true as well. I maybe wouldn't recommend it to someone who isn't like a filmy person, because it's quite like, it's a weird film, the way Jake Gyllenhaal's character talks is weird. It's all very stylized. There's this amazing like electric guitar score like in the background, which I love. And I don't, I think if someone just wanted a kind of straight, shoot 'em up thriller, or even something like Zodiac, that's not what you're getting with this. You are getting a film where you are being asked to kind of follow this utterly reprehensible weirdo on this journey. And I don't think that it's really for everyone.
Was there a sense of almost like, oh, good for you got your Mustang?
He saw it. Yeah. He wanted, I saw, I conquered.
He's getting better cameras. He's got a better police scanner. Sorry. Ella, recommendability.
I think I am going to go for a 3.7.
Ooh.
Because like Hannah said, I would recommend it to some people and I'd be really confident that they'd love it. But then there is a risk associated with it, even with those people that, as you say, it's not quite a thriller. Mm-hmm. It's not quite a gory thing. It's not quite a character study. There's a lot of strange things in there. And then also people who don't want anything too creepy and don't want to spend, 2 hours with a psychopath, don't.
It's longer than I remember it being. And when it started, I was like, oh no, I wanted to get to bed a bit earlier.
You stayed up for it.
3.7, of course. My wife left halfway through because she was properly tired and we just come back from a long flight. But I managed to stick it out. Helen?
This film is great and I think it's fantastic and weird and creepy and horrible in all kinds of ways. It's never going to be for everyone. But still, I want to give it high marks because I just love everything about it in its weird, horrible, creepy way. So 4.5. And I was just going to say, we were talking about friends. So there's that great line where he says, "A friend is a gift you give yourself."
That was at the date, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There was quite a few creepy lines.
Oh, it's so creepy.
My favourite line is when he's talking to Rick and he says, what if it's not that I don't understand people, it's that I just don't like them? And I was like, oh, shit, this guy's demented.
But you kind of like, oh, yeah, kind of maybe like, I've known someone like that, or you're just like...
But that's the point for me, is like, he's a psychopath. He just has no empathy for people. He's got Rick on board because he can manipulate Rick, pay him To be honest, I thought $30 a day is actually not bad if you've got no experience. I don't know.
That freelance life.
Yeah, exactly. When I went freelance, if someone could guarantee me £30 a day, I'd be like, okay, let's talk.
So just hold a camera and read Google Maps.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I'm there.
I'm sure I could do other stuff and maybe get some other jobs whilst waiting. So I'm going to go 4.5 as well. I think points taken away because it's creepy and weird, and there will be people who just don't get the film. But I'm surprised that I don't think it's just for people who go to the cinemas a lot. I think more people will take stuff away from it, but I think you have to know a bit about them, and if they just want like Greatest Showman, then
exactly,
it's not going to be for them.
I do worry, with the Oscars being what they were this year. I'm like, there's, and even like Velvet Buzzsaw, if someone watched Velvet Buzzsaw and then was like, oh, should I give his other films a chance? I'm like, oh, I don't know. Maybe he's just not for you.
Well, we need to, okay, Jasper, and if you've got any friends, come on board, come on the show, pick Velvet Buzzsaw, because I haven't seen it yet.
No, I haven't seen it.
It's not good.
Oh, is it not good?
Rewatch Nightcrawler.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's not do
Jasper,
that one. Jasper, don't come on the show.
I'm a little bit disappointed that it isn't very good, but then because this film is so good,
I give him
it
a
would have been
pass.
hard for them to replicate.
I'm still on board. Like, I've not seen Roman J. Israel, but I'm kind of on board with Dan
Is
Gilroy.
that the Denzel Washington?
Yeah, so he was Oscar nominated for that. So, and by all accounts, it's fine.
That's
but
what you want to hear.
I think that by all accounts, it's fine. I think that Dan Gilroy is really good at zoning in on a character. So maybe that's why I need to watch Roman J as well. But Nightcrawler is great because Lou Bloom is a great character. Yeah. And Velvet Buzzsaw has too many characters. That's the issue. There's like 6 characters you're meant to care about, and you end up not caring about any of them. Whereas this, I think you do become very invested in particularly Lou and particularly Rick as well.
I feel we're getting a half-decent Velvet Buzzsaw review by proxy.
Yeah.
Because we're not letting Jasper on.
It's a twofer.
Yeah. Repeat viewing score. Hannah?
I think this is probably a 5, guys. I had such a blast rewatching it.
How many times have you rewatched it?
This is only the second time I watched it since I saw it in the cinema. And I was excited to rewatch it, but I do think it pays dividends. And talk about this more in the small screen score, but I think, watching at home is a very different experience to watching it in the cinema. But yeah, no, I totally would recommend rewatching it to people.
So when you say repeat viewing score of 5, this isn't something you'd watch all the time, but it's something you think has to be rewatched.
I would always be excited to rewatch it.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Kind of maybe once a year, I'd be like, that's time to pick out Nightcrawler again and go for another round.
Christmas.
Yeah, Christmas
time.
To get the family, settle them down.
Mom, Dad. I don't know why I said American accent. Mummy, Daddy.
Let me tell you a story about a guy named Lou.
Ella.
Well, I've been thinking about it during this discussion, and I really enjoyed rewatching it. And so I must say that I watched Velvet Buzzsaw before rewatching Nightcrawler, and it made me enjoy Nightcrawler even more because, as we've established, I wasn't quite so taken with Velvet Buzzsaw. But I feel like now that I've rewatched it, I'm not really in a hurry to watch it again as a third time. I think it's one that really benefits from that second viewing to kind of deepen the understanding of it. But now I'm quite satisfied to leave it where it is.
Sure.
So I think I'd go for maybe a 3.
Okay. We had Social Network on.
Yes.
And it's a similar kind of case here. Everyone saw Social Network in the cinema. Everyone around the table saw it in the cinema, but then hadn't seen it until coming back here.
Yeah, I've not seen it.
I'd seen it. Yeah, right. I'd seen it before.
Oh, you've seen it like more than post cinema, but before it. But it seems everyone saw this when it came out in the cinema, but haven't seen it since. Is that 3? Is it 4 years since then?
It's more than 4.
Yeah, just over 4.
Yeah, because I was in 6th form, so a long time ago now.
So is that a nice kind of distance? 4 years?
I
more
think
than 4 years?
4 years is like a really good amount. If you saw it in the cinema 4 years ago, going for any film, I think it's a great time to rewatch. Let's all start digging out 2014 movies, guys. Yeah.
Head to the IMDb.
I need to rewatch Social Network. I've not watched that since.
Well, listen to our review.
Yeah.
And then watch it.
and then watch it and decide.
Listen to the podcast.
Listen to the podcast. Yeah, absolutely. Helen.
So yes, saw it in the cinema, and I noticed that it had been on Netflix for a while, and it was like,
why didn't you pull the trigger before this?
What?
Why didn't you pull the trigger on on it before?
Because
now?
I thought someone's going to see that little shiny fish floating there amongst all the gunk, and pull that out.
The shiny fish.
Fish that one. Get that fish, that little fish, and yeah. And it's terrible, isn't it? I was really excited about watching this terrible, creepy film again, and going, "Oh, this film's creepy," and wasn't particularly fazed by sort of watching it at home. So I'm going to give it 4. I think 4 years is quite a good gap to have. I'm not going to rush out and see it, but I'm probably going to watch it again in a few more years. And I think it's a really great reminder. Bill Paxton doing these brilliant sort of little supporting roles and kind of the energy that he brings to it, and I quite miss him. I need to,
because when he died, he was still very much a character actor. And there's very few roles where he took the lead, apart from was it Big, that HBO show where he's in a Mormon relationship.
Big Love. Yeah, I never watched that.
I never watched it. That's the only role I know he had where he was kind of main. So I generally really struggled to identifying from different films. And when I had to ask you, Helen, was that the Bill Paxton? Was that the guy? So I need to watch it because I know a lot of people really, really love him as an actor, and I need to rewatch Alien, or is it Aliens?
Aliens.
I think it's going to Prince Charles Cinema. Alien, the first one.
Alien is
because it's an anniversary.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm going to go for 3, but I feel it's a higher 3. I think I'm going to.
Well,
yeah, because I think it deserves watching, but I tend to think repeat viewing for me, higher ones are ones I watch more frequently and at the drop of a hat. But this is definitely bears rewatching, so I'm going to go for 3. Small screen score. We all saw this in the cinema.
Yeah, it's nice to have the comparison, isn't it? I think it's like a 4 on a small screen. I think I was really glad I did see it at the cinema, but I think it works perfectly well on a small screen, or even like a home cinema kind of big TV and speaker setting.
Medium screen.
Yeah, medium screen. There's a lot of kind of footage in it. Like news footage and camera footage, and I think it kind of makes it less stressful watching it on a small screen. You're not kind of like as overwhelmed as I was when I watched it. The only thing I would say is that I think the score probably benefits from having the kind of Dolby Atmos surroundings.
A fair investment for my lounge. Ella?
I think I am going to go for 3 again. Again, I did enjoy it a lot rewatching it, but as you say, I think those visuals, as they are quite dark, I mean, you obviously can see it on a small screen, but it was just so impressive on a big screen, and the sound and everything. But it's a confident 3, I'd say.
Helen?
I'm going to go this a 4. I enjoyed seeing it in the cinema and having that kind of, the big screen noise and immersion of it, and the kind of collective, what on earth are we watching? Did you kind of just see that? And then it's kind of, it's a little bit stranger when you then bring that into your home and you kind of have this weird creepiness in there as well. So I got weird, creepy experiences from both.
I'm going to go for, let's do the 4 as well. I think it works well on the TV screen.
On a reasonable size.
Yeah.
Screen, yeah.
So I thought, if this was the first time you had to watch it, I was at home on Netflix, then absolutely go for it. So 4. So engagement score. Hannah.
As engaged was like how engaged I was.
Yeah.
With it.
Did you feel the need to pull away at any point to make it, to check Netflix? Or?
See, I was watching it at work, so that was a distracting environment to be in.
Can you just sit and watch films? Can you just say, I'm just going to watch Mary Poppins?
Well, yes. Yes, I can. But I'm always doing something else. So, I wasn't as engaged as I should have been.
Sure.
But that's not the film's fault. So this is a hard one. I'm going to go for a 4.1, I think.
I kind of like that. I can just sit there and catch up on films I haven't seen.
I've got a very big screen, so nice. I can have the film open in one corner and be doing some writing at the same time.
Nice.
It's not, if I'm trying to do an article, I probably wouldn't do that. But if I'm doing kind of like, admin work, it's fine. So that's what I was doing, which is not maybe giving it the respect it deserves. Sorry, Dan.
Ella?
I gave it a 5 for engagement, really. I I did have to pull away, and I had to pause this film a few times, and I was very annoyed. I was very upset to have to do so. Because I think it's so gripping. Yeah.
Helen?
I'm also going to give it a 5. It's an hour and 57 minutes, and I don't think it feels like a 2-hour film for me.
It flies by, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think the first time you watch it, you're just, how far can he go? How far can he go? He went that far. So how much further can he? Oh, he's going that far, and it just builds and builds and builds and builds, and it's just really, the pace is excellent. There's no bits where you're like, oh, it's a bit slow at the start or it's a bit rushed. It's just a really
Nicely
good
paced,
film, yeah. And it even this time round, I was fully engaged in it.
I'm going to go 4.5. Testament to the facts of the filmmaking and maybe my memory. The first time I was like 100% engaged. The second time I was still like in it, like all the way in, because I couldn't really remember some nuances and I'd forgotten some bits, like him dragging that body.
Yeah, that's
was like, dude, what are you doing? That's a crime scene there.
he's tampering with the evidence. Yeah.
And when he sees a home invasion, I'd forgotten that bit where he actually sees clearly who the people are and films it.
Yeah.
And then holds it back.
And the cafe scene, diner scene. Yeah, there's so many kind of
holds
shocking
it back
moments.
to set up that entire scene.
Yeah. Crazy. So 4.5, which gives us an overall score of 4.1. 1.5.
I feel like that's quite high.
Yeah, very high. That's good. That's very good.
I'm happy with that.
Should we do
this round,
a quick round of Little White Lies scores?
Yeah, shall I tell you
Absolutely.
the breakdown?
Please.
Of course. So at Little White Lies, we like to give films 3 scores. We have like a multi-tier system. So they're out of 5, and it is in anticipation, enjoyment, and in retrospect. So anticipation at 5, I was super excited to rewatch this.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoyment, maybe a 4. I think just because I was kind of distracted whilst I was watching it, and unfortunately film criticism is subjective, and it might have been a 5 on a different day, but it was a 4 when I was doing it. And then in retrospect, I think it is a 5. I do think it is, like, for this to be Dan Gilroy's directorial debut is like so impressive to me. And I think it is like top 3 Gyllenhaal performances.
I'm liking a lot of people having knockout out of the park directorial debuts.
Yeah,
even like even Star is Born. I'm like, how's that your first one, dude?
Hereditary.
Yeah, Hereditary.
I've not seen Hereditary,
and
but
The Witch. I think it's testament.
Was Moonlight his first one?
No. I think it's testament that Dan Gilroy was a screenwriter beforehand, so he was kind of had cut his teeth before making this.
So that means we can pull in Ex Machina as well.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Your LWL scores, Ella?
I think I would say 4 in anticipation for rewatching it. I'd seen it, 4 years ago or whatever it was, and I remembered having a good time, but also my memory is really bad, so I was like, oh, maybe it's not as great. I'm now older and wiser, whatever. Enjoyment, I think I would go for a 5, just because, I kept being really frustrated when I had to pause it, and just every second that I saw, I just like this, it's amazing, it's brilliant. So 5 for enjoyment. In retrospect, maybe a 4, just because now that I have rewatched it, I think I've had enough. I can leave it where it is, and there are some bits that just I'm thinking about it a lot, but I kind of wish I was thinking about it a little bit less.
Okay, Helen.
This is probably going to be no surprise that I'm going to go quite high with this. So, a 5 for anticipation. I'm really happy that you chose it and I got to watch it again. Enjoyment, I just think it's a really interesting film, and it's 4 years old, but it doesn't feel like it's aged. We still kind of have that really weird relationship with terrible things and wanting to kind of capture them. And retrospect 5, I really think it's a brilliant film, and it's made me realise that there's a few films of Jake Gyllenhaal's that I haven't yet caught up with, but that I want to add to my watch list.
every time I see Gyllenhaal, I still want to see Donnie Darko again. Just generally, I think that's probably.
I wonder how well that's aged though.
Well,
I imagine it's probably a little bit hokey, a little bit.
I've not watched it in years.
Yeah, let's watch it. Let's try and watch it. Someone, Jasper, when are you listening? When it comes back on Netflix?
Be on Netflix. Yeah.
Was it? Is it?
It was at one
was.
point.
It was at one point. Yeah.
Gone again. Mm.
I'm going to mirror yourself, Hannah, with the 545. I think when you said it, I was like, yeah, of course, yeah. And then I
was terrified it was going to go off Netflix before we recorded. I was like, if that goes, I'm screwed.
And I was just like, it's not really. I wouldn't say enjoyment is what you think. Yeah, it's just like,
it's not like woo, woo, woo. It's like,
it is tense, and it's like, and 5 for in anticipation again, just for those bits that we briefly discussed at the end, like setting up like that scene in the cafe and the fast food place is like, how have you done that? And then the end of Rick is like, dude. So we always ask people when we come to record, we tell them we're going to do a film, and in this case, on Twitter we ask people, and in this case we said we're reviewing Nightcrawler with @Kemp, and good job, Liz. Have you seen it? Give your thoughts for an on-air shout-out on Flixwatcher. And you guys came in your droves. So we're going to read out a few of these reviews now. Hannah, will you take the top one, please?
Yeah, this is from Top Film Tip. Morally devoid bottom feeder makes his success filming death on the streets of LA unrelentingly intense, discomforting drama. Sheer powerhouse performances, script, subject matter, all-round flawless. 5 awkward propositions out of 5.
Ella, do you want to say the next one?
Yep. So this is from @Manda Ailey. There is 5 shining star emojis. I love this movie. It was in my top 3 films of that year and should have had more traction in awards season that year. Gyllenhaal is absolutely brilliant.
Hard agree there. I think if this had been a Scorsese film, he would have got an Oscar.
Helen.
So this is from What Were They Thinking? Haunting film with Gyllenhaal at his absolute best and most terrifying. It should have won several Oscars, and they've also gone for 5 stars.
Hannah, do you want to take us back to the next one?
Yeah, this is Easy Riders Raging Podcast. Loved it. Got to be in my top 10 for the last decade, with Gyllenhaal putting in a performance that, let's be honest, deserves some Oscar love. 5-star film.
Ella.
From @Cult45 Podcast. Actually love this movie.
Do you want to take the next one, as that was not really a review, not asking us to do anything, not doing anything we asked of them.
I mean, it's not incorrect, but yeah.
Actually love this movie.
So this is from Sean Alexander @SAlexanderFilm. 5 out of 5 stars. Jake Gyllenhaal is terrific, terrifying and hypnotic. Missing Bill Paxton now. This supporting role is so fantastic.
And Helen.
The last one is from Mike Guzman. This is the movie that made me realise how underappreciated Gyllenhaal is. I think it's a step up from his performance in Zodiac, where he also plays regular guy with an obsession. 5 stars.
I think they're very different roles, though. Yeah. I think that...
Do you feel... I don't think he's...
I don't think
it's
a step up. I think they're just... I mean, I think that Gyllenhaal should have an Oscar. I think he's done
He's tried very hard to get one recently.
Well, yeah, no,
and been ignored.
Stronger was really him gunning for it, which is funny because I think...
Not strong enough.
Rude. I think that in Zodiac... and Nightcrawler, he delivers the goods in Brokeback Mountain.
I mean, I really like him in The Good Girl.
He's so good in The Good Girl. I was going to bring that up earlier.
Yeah, and Jennifer Aniston is brilliant in that as well.
When we were talking about Miss Stevens, because I think there's like a, creepy obsession teenagers. But anyway.
I found it interesting to see that tweet with Zodiac, because it just didn't make sense to me when I was thinking about Nightcrawler that it was the same actor playing these 2 characters. And then when the first images of Zodiac came back into my mind, I was like, Lou Bloom is the kind of guy that Jake Gyllenhaal's character in Zodiac would be like chasing or doing, and they just seem like completely opposite characters. Now, like Lou Bloom must be the antagonistic villain, and then when I thought about it, I was like, wait, but he's not. He's like, is he the good guy? Like, he's not the one actually, doing the crime, and yet And yet.
Yeah.
Is Nightcrawler set in San Francisco?
LA.
Because, of course, Zodiac is San Francisco.
So it could have popped down and...
done a crime.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, this is not quite related to those comments, but I just want to say, like, it is so impressive to make a film that is shot nearly all at night and to make it kind of look as crisp and beautiful. And
like over 80 locations or something.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels so ambitious for a first film.
Guys, can you let us know, Jasper and the rest of the people, where they can find you, where he can find you online? Sounds a bit creepy that way. I'm not going to say that again. Where they can find you online, and say sayonara and bye to everyone who's listening.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I'm a prolific tweeter. My @ is @goodjobliz. I tweet about everything. Often Jake Gyllenhaal. I do spend a lot of time tweeting about him.
She does.
And you can also find me on littlewhitelies.com and the Little White Lies Truth and Movies podcast.
You can find me on Twitter @EFEKemp. I probably won't tweet much about Jake Gyllenhaal again. But
that's Hannah's territory.
I'm not ruling it out. I'm excited for everything he does next. You can read me on Culture Whisper, sometimes Little White Lies, sometimes Sight and Sound, and you can listen to me sometimes on the Cuzon Film podcast.
Fantastic. Cheers,
Thanks
guys.
so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much to Brendan Russell for his amazing editing skills, and to the lovely people, mighty people, for the tunes that you can hear right now.
Thank you, as always, for listening to this episode. Don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you find your podcast. Leave us your 5-star review on iTunes and follow us @FlixWatcherPod on Twitter.